Welcome to the Next Generation Dog Podcast, hosted by Melinda Benbow of Urban Uplander Pet Care and Bethany Carter of Sanguine Moon Kennels. Join Melinda and Bethany as they discuss dog breeds, sports, training, health, and much more with special guests. Tune in weekly for all things dedicated to dogs.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Next Generation Dog Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Melinda Benbow, and I'm here with our other host, Bethany Carter. Bethany, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you for having me. As always, it's always a pleasure, and I'm so excited for this episode.
I love it. So we are approaching 2023. So this episode is really just a conversational piece about training objectives. I know that I like to plan out my year in advance. I like to have specific events to have on my calendar. It gives me good due dates to have to set goals for, to have something to work towards. So I know in this episode, I kind of personally want to talk about some of the things I have set up for my dogs and also pick Bethany's brain about some events, and maybe not particular events, but just, things we want to participate in this year and some things that we want to do to get ourselves and our dogs ready for these events. So this is kind of our way of verbally talking out some training objectives and making some notes for ourselves and kind of some accountability and copeability in our training programs. We're putting this stuff out there to each other to keep each other accountable, and hopefully you all help us stay accountable. So this year we have pups that are entering into the testing systems. Shug is my eldest setter. She's only a few years old, but she will not be participating in hunting stuff this year. For those of you who have followed me on social media, she does have some health issues, specifically some joint issues. So we are keeping her physical activity limited. Doesn't mean she's not participating in stuff, but what she does, how often she does it, and how intense it is, we have to be very strategic about. But I have Jasper. Jasper is almost a year old, and so this year he's going to be continuing some testing and trialing and training from last year, his first year. And Bethany, I think you have some dogs ready to do some stuff this year too.
Yeah, so we are really focusing our time on Stitch this year. We'll not be breeding in 2023 as we're just going to be competing and having fun. So we have Lilo also.
It's all about.
Yes, Lilo will be a year in March. She also will be tested in NAVHDA NA, hopefully before her birthday expiration. So that is our first and focus, is making sure that we find a test for her. Hopefully Missouri lets us in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's first and foremost for us too. For any of you who aren't familiar and maybe are listening because you have bird dogs, you want to do bird dog stuff. NAVHDA is the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association, and it's the NA test is kind of like the puppy test. You do have to complete it before 16 months. So with both of our dogs getting close to 16 months, we are like pushing to test somewhere. However, these tests do fill up very far in advance. So we are currently on the wait list for one of the Missouri chapters. And so hopefully we can travel together and participate in that. We also got to travel our first years with Stitch and Shug for an NA test. And I know I had a blast, so I would love to do that again. Now let's talk about that real quick. So NA test, do you want to run through with our listeners what the 3 phases of the NA test is?
Yeah, so usually on testing day, they go through the field portion. And the field portion, you will walk along with a judge and your dog. And oftentimes there's 2 to 3 judges. And so each test venue will maybe hold it a little differently. And kind of see where everybody wants to organize it. But then that field portion, you are releasing your dog, and your dog is expected to hunt for birds, for an upland bird. Usually it's a chucker. And once they find that bird, they're expected to hold that point and hold steady for just a brief period of time. What we don't want to see is bird or dogs that just bust birds or run right in. We want to see
Yeah.
a pointing dog stop and point.
And
And
since they're
so,
puppies, it doesn't have to be anything long, it's just they have to do a point of some sort for a few
yeah,
seconds.
yeah. And then I think we all learned the hard way after Shug and Stitch is that they also really focus on obedience and specifically recall. And that was
That
something that
cooperative, yeah,
just being cooperative, right? And so Stitch being a farther running dog, it was difficult to reel her in. I was even told by someone that she was too much of a dog for me at one point. Uh, but the old saying is you can reel them in, you can't reel them out, or push them out.
absolutely.
So we worked on reeling in, and we successfully did that. So Stitch did get a prize too on that one, probably because a little heavier on that cooperation. But we did have fun. So they go through that
It's a
field
puppy
portion thing.
test,
Yeah. And
it's,
you'll see
it's
everybody. It's
contrived.
everybody's struggle. Everybody has had that
Absolutely.
one puppy that like books it to the next zip code.
I
Um,
mean, you even think about, Shug's test, we trained in that same field the day before. Oh, amazing. 100 bucks, prize one behavior. Next weekend, and her test, she acted like she'd never been in that field in her life. But it's
yep,
puppies, right? So it is a
yep,
puppy test. So you have to understand that your puppy may do puppy stuff.
yep. And that they did. So they point that bird. The judges score based on what they observe for that particular day, right? So they score you there, and then you usually get an opportunity to move to either water or tracking. And so for the water portion, your dog does not have to retrieve and bring back to shore, but they do want to see your dog swim out and then make their way back in. But they
And
actually want to see your dog
cooperation again.
swim. Yes, and cooperate, right? Your dog shouldn't swim across the
Yeah,
pond and
as
then
you
take
read,
off running.
if you absolutely, if you go to the NAVHDA site and you look more into this, you're going to see cooperation is going to be the main point they hit in all of these areas.
Yes, very much so. So again, with that human animal bond, you got to make sure that that love language is spoken between both of you. Uh, so that field or that water portion is the another component. Uh, and from there, I know the test that we've been to, they then go into tracking. And I think a lot of venues do it this way to just kind of break up the field so that they know the puppies understand that there's a change in expectation because there's a change in activity. So for that tracking portion, you can be offered to either have your puppy view the pheasant before tracking it or have it go in blindly. Different people will say different things on recommendations, but I think the overall consensus is to avoid telling your puppy where they can find all the pheasants. Otherwise, they
Absolutely.
tend to just kind of go back to that truck or wherever they're held at.
Yes,
So
like
there
my dog
is,
went back to the hunting field. She
yes,
said, "No, we are not tracking, we're hunting."
yes. And so, although there's a rule book, it is judge's discretion on kind of what that individual expects to see tracking look like. But kind of per the book, you want to see two feather piles, just a very short distance apart. And so that way you're getting your puppy used to a different expectation of we're going to track, track, track. And then you just kind of send them off once they get past those piles. And so the expectation would be that your puppy would understand that what they just scented, that they need to go follow it or track it.
Mhm.
And so then your
Abs
puppy is expected to follow that track, and they do have to break brush. So your puppy has to go into a brush to be able to find this bird but your puppy does not have to produce a bird. We just want
No.
that expectation that the puppy would move in a forward direction in a similar fashion that that pheasant moved. And
And even if
so,
they leave the scent, get back on the scent, even if they're
mhm.
using the air to track a little bit, as long as they're making that attempt. And so this is something that this NA test it's a great puppy test. It shows wonderful natural ability in the field, water retrieving, and by tracking. And these three components isn't something that you're going to see in every hunt test or in every hunting situation, but for the versatile aspect of what this organization is, it's a great way to see a little bit of versatility. So as kennels and as breeders, and in particular gun dog breed enthusiasts, we do like to participate in this. Again, we have to get these tests in because our pups are almost aged out. So we're going to be focusing on these three components. I know Jasper, and I think you can say the same for Lilo, at their ages, they've already really awesomely taken to water. They're great at water retrieving. And I can even say that with my English setter, my field setter that people say can't water retrieve. He does a wonderful job. So we're going to continue to do water stuff just because he loves it. So I know we are going to set up Wednesdays at our local dock diving indoor place just to get him back in a pool through the winter and get him doing something that he enjoys and just keeping up with the reinforcement of that particular behavior. And then for tracking, this is something that's very new to me. I did not train Shug for tracking. I really just said, hey, let's see how it goes in complete transparency. It's something I've never trained to do, therefore I did not know how, and I relied on her natural ability. I think for her first test relying on natural ability, I think she did very well. My judges maybe had a different criteria than I did, but out of what I saw, I definitely enjoyed watching her track that day. However, with Jasper, I do know that I want to take proper steps to make sure that he's better prepared for that portion of the test. So we will have a really experienced trainer in NAVHDA and judge popping on the podcast in a couple of weeks to sit down and tell us more about that. But tracking is definitely an objective for me. And then getting back to the bird dog fields to get back on some pigeons and work our way back into quail is definitely our main objective for these next few months on our end.
Yes, agreed. I started Lilo on quail just prior to Stitch having puppies, and I shut down everybody. But
Yep.
I wanted her to experience a different scent. And so I think we achieved that and getting kind of those new smells of game birds introduced. Otherwise, they can just kind of get stuck on that pigeon smell. So we plan to continue to do more of that and get some chucker so that way all the smells have been associated. I know that
Which
Ryan's already
also
been
means,
pheasant hunting.
yeah, he's been hunting all year.
Yes.
I imagine he's been pheasant hunting. But we do need to make a quail chucker run soon. We should definitely put that on our checklist.
Yes, very much so. But we have some deceased pheasant that we've introduced with. In fact, I let Stitch carry one around the house just for her good old days' sake, and she was very pleased to be on hold.
Just to have it in her mouth, it's just so
Yes.
reinforcing for these bird dogs. So yeah, we're Bethany and I are fortunate enough to be members of our local bird dog club, which is about an hour away from me. So we get to go out there and utilize the fields. There is a pigeon coop on property, but unfortunately, it's not open during this time of year. However, that does not mean we don't have awesome friends in the area who are willing to let us utilize their birds. So it's definitely time for us to get back to the field. And Bethany, you make a wonderful point about introducing other game scents to your dog. I know for Jasper's first junior hunt test, we took a couple weeks before his test to acclimate him to quail so he could be prepared for the bird that he was going to have to find during that test. And unfortunately, those couple weeks just weren't enough for him to get his mind off of pigeon. It took a couple braces for him to understand that we're not out there for pigeon, we're out here for quail today. And once he understood that that's all that was in the field, his mentality shifted. But yes, quail, and more quail over the next few months for sure.
Yep, quail and those beautiful chukar.
Yes, because NAVHDA definitely loves using chukar. I'm coming to realize. So getting them to understand that there are many different birds that we want them to have their nose on in the fields is definitely going to be important. I know for Jasper, definitely steadiness on those quail. Pen-raised quail fly a lot different than wild birds. And so I know in my training, steadiness is a huge objective. And when you have a big running dog that will run hundreds of yards out ahead of you, you want to make sure that they are steady on birds, because the last thing you want is your dog busting birds before you can get up there to make these shots. So steadiness will be super important for him. So yeah, I plan on just recapping all that stuff, and hopefully we can get some really good ideas on how to teach tracking. You said Lilo and Stitch are going to be working hard this year. When it comes to NA, it sounds like you probably have similar objectives for NA tests, but what's Stitch going to be doing? What are we planning for that?
Yes. So Stitch loves the water and she loves hunting. So we're going to stay true to that. And we're going to go and move towards NAVHDA utility tests and progress her in that direction. I'd love to see her placed there. I think NAVHDA has a very particular versatility that they test and account for that some of the other venues just don't. And I think that is good information and good data to analyze when I'm looking at a breeding program. So I do want to test her in utility so that I understand more about the dog that I have and how I can improve her lineage. I know I chose Major because he was a prize one utility in conjunction to a senior hunter. And he's a phenomenal companion in the home as well. So those were virtues that I really cared about when selecting. So I wanted to see that versatility enhanced in my breeding because that's what GSPs are. If I'm breeding to the true nature of GSPs, I have to honor what that AKC or NAVHDA review, which are very similar for their standards, appear to be. And so that is a true versatile dog. That is why GSPs were created. So I want to hold true to that and I want to test in that nature. Now, once we get that utility prize one, I'm going to jump over and depending where she's at, we'll do a senior hunt or a master hunt. And then we're going to move back into the National Shoot to Retrieve Association because that is our favorite. It is the community that we have felt the most welcome in. And it is a sport that we can just get down and dirty and we can do it a lot. They have trials, sometimes 3 times a month, where, practicing for or training for health or for AKC tests or the NAVHDA tests, that's once or twice a year that you're going to get into those tests. But I like to do something all the time and keep that conditioning up and just that reinforcement. So we will end with the National Shoot to Retrieve Association as far as our hunting goals. I also want to focus on the dock diving and continue and excel Stitch in that because that is something that she truly loves. And I would love to just honor her as a dog. It is so fun. And I have such a tribe that is about dock diving with Dr. Lyons, with you, and I've met a couple other GSP
that's
people.
the one thing we haven't actually done together quite yet
Together.
is dock diving. Our summer schedules got a little hectic and crazy, so we did a few things solo dolo this past year, which, for anyone getting into dog sports is not awful. A lot of people show up solo. Everyone's super nice. You just think it's just a whole bunch of dog nerds like ourselves. So you're always going to be feeling welcome, even if you don't have like a bestie to do this stuff with, like myself. But I think that you're right when it comes to testing. I am still in the puppy phase of my journey. Especially since Shug isn't at a place to progress in the hunting sense. Jasper is who we've picked up with, and so I'm excited to get him done with all of his puppy stuff, because that's all NA and junior hunter and stuff like that is. It's really once you can get past that, and that's when your real training really begins, when you can really start honing in and shaping particular necessary gun dog behaviors. And for myself, as who does have a relatively different style of training than a lot of people in my community, it's a neat challenge for me to see myself get to those next phases once Jasper's done with these puppy portions. So UT sounds awesome and fun, especially for an English setter, since you don't see too many of them advance past the NA portion. And then, same thing with AKC, Master, Senior. We'll see how all that progresses. But I think in spring, I'm focused on NAVHDA and A test. I definitely am going to do some more fast cat. It's something Shug can do. It's just a 100-yard dash. She is cleared by her vet to do this. I just can't do them like every weekend. I will only probably do maybe 3 to 5 in the year for her, just to give her something fun to do and keep her in the rankings. You have to run, I believe, 3 to 5 races in a year to stay in the breed rankings. And for a kennel, I would love to keep myself in those scores. And again, she loves it. You definitely don't have to force this dog to run fast. She enjoys it. Like you said with Stitch, she doesn't even care about the bag. It's just a recall. She wants to get to her mom and get lots of love and affection at the end of it. So we'll do that with her. And dock diving for Jasper again. We did that for our first time last year, and Jasper loves it. As it got colder into the year, I think he started not loving it as much. So we definitely stopped, and we are going to stick to heated pools and places that really set him up for success. And I think Canine Splash Zone has been that for him. So a lot of what we do for dock diving and fast cat this year, I think I'm going to aim to stick with Canine Splash Zone, especially since they are so close at an hour and a half away. But in dog terms, that's like right around the corner. So, and then fall, we'll definitely do a recap again and talk about some more training goals after we get past this first part of the year. But I think fall, we're really going to focus on field trialing, and hopefully I can be in a place to also join you in NASTRA. I think that's something Jasper would really like. And like you said, there's so many opportunities to trial almost all year round with the organization.
Yeah, it'll be a whole lot of fun. It is a sport that still needs members, just like any other one, but it needs its members to continue. And so we want to see that. We want to see young people out there. And we're starting to see this shift that there are starting to be young people, young women, young men being out there and being present and having fun and working dogs.
Absolutely. And it's so sad to see, like, on social media, this event's been canceled due to lack of registrations and stuff like that. So, I think that's another goal with this podcast is, we want to take you on our training journeys. We want to show you what these journeys look like and what these organizations really look like. You get a glimpse through social media and stuff like that. But I know that I think it sucks that I had to wait almost 30 years to get into the bird dog community, because it really is a fun community to be a part of. My favorite people have been, that I've met have come through this community, yourself included. So I'm excited about the stuff we have coming up this year. Again, in our blog, we'll start to post more of the information about these organizations, being NAVHDA, NADD, which is the North American Diving Dogs. We also participate in AKC, which is American Kennel Club, UKC, and we'll just bring you some resources to learn more about these organizations and their testing systems. So as we are training, we can maybe bring you some recaps on what we're doing and how training's going, and just bring you all along for the journey. So I'm excited for this year, Bethany.
I am too. I think it should be really fun. A lot of memories should be made this year. And I'm just so excited to see where life takes us.
I know it's going to be an awesome year. So again, if you don't follow us already, definitely hop on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all those fun social media sites, and follow us as Next Generation Dog Podcast, and also as Melinda Benbow of Urban Uplander Pet Care and Bethany Carter of Sanguine Moon Kennels. And until next time, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for hopping on, Bethany.
Thank you, and you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Generation Dog Podcast. Weekly episodes are released on Fridays on Spotify and YouTube. Please follow the Next Gen Dog Pod on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, and Facebook. For even more content dedicated to all things dogs, follow Urban Uplander Pet Care and Sanguine Moon Kennels on Instagram and Facebook.